It was during the reign of Abdul Malik bin Marwan, Khalifa of Damascus, that the question came up of appointing a new wali, or governor, of the Iraq. The people of Iraq had given the Khalifa very great trouble and anxiety, and the last 7 of his walis had been done to death. A great majlis was held in Damascus, and among other business, the choosing of the new wali came up for decision. How was it to be done? After much thought, Abdul Malik stood up in the great council hall, round which sat his nobles and great men of state, and in a loud voice asked, "Who shall be wali of the Iraq?" Not a man among his great personalities replied, but a small, unpretentious, and rather elderly man sitting at the bottom of the hall, among the Khalifa's secretaries, suddenly got up and in a deep voice cried out, saying that he himself, son of so-and-so, both of such and such a tribe, and of such and such a family, was for the Iraq. The Khalifa raised his hand, and glancing sternly at Hajjaj bin Yusuf, for it was he who had dared to raise his voice, he, a mere secretary among the council of the great, said, "Oh, though without a mother, keep silence, the Iraq is not for thee." Again, the commander of the faithful, Abdul Malik bin Marwan, appealed to his courtiers and asked who would accept the governorship of the Iraq, and again no one replied. There was a death-like silence. Then jumped Hajjaj bin Yusuf, and again extolling his virtues and those of his family, called out that he was ready to take on the Iraq. As before, the Khalifa, with brow blacker than ever, suppressed the unlooked-for candidate. A third time, the Khalifa appealed for a brave and resolute man to take over the governorship of the Iraq, and yet a third time there was silence. Once more, Hajjaj bin Yusuf boldly spoke out and said, "Iraq is for me, O commander of the faithful." On this occasion, the Khalifa did not refuse his request, but replied, "It would seem in very truth that the Iraq is for you, my son. Go, then, thou shalt have it." Hajjaj was on his way to Kufa, and when a few days' journey out, he sent messengers to call all the great sheiks and notables of the country to the capital, with orders to meet him in the great mosque on a certain Friday. The appointed day arrived, and the powerful emirs and sheiks of Iraq were all there, each defiant yet present with his strong contingent of men to watch what would happen. Some of these were openly hostile, others were quizzical, and yet others came with amusement to look at a possible new victim. Had they not encompassed the death of 7 better men than this wizened and elderly little man? And had the noble Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet himself, any better success? What had they to fear? At the appointed hour, the great open praying space in front of the mosque was filled to overflowing with a vast, expectant multitude. There was a dead silence, broken by an occasional satirical laugh and loud jest. Suddenly, in stalked Hajjaj bin Yusuf, who shortly was to show the recalcitrant ones the metal that he was made of. Half a dozen mail-clad troopers alone accompanied the man. Hajjaj, disdaining to uncover his face, and still with the ends of his headcloth folded across his mouth and nose, slowly but with firm step mounted the great pulpit. A secretary had followed the party, and this man took his post at the bottom step of the pulpit. Hajjaj faced the multitude, and in a muffled voice, and speaking through his kafiyah, ordered the secretary to deliver the message of the great Abdul Malik bin Marwan, Khalifa and commander of the faithful, appointing him, Hajjaj bin Yusuf, to the governorship of the Iraq. The secretary, nothing loath, stood up, and in a loud voice began as follows, "From the commander of the faithful, peace be unto you." There was a pause. Then, "Stop reading, O secretary," came the deep and steely voice of the man in the pulpit. "This mannerless scum requireth a lesson." Upon which he slowly uncovered his face, and let his kafia fall on either side of his cheeks. "People of Kufa," he cried with a raised voice, "it seemeth that ye have no manners." I heard no answering salutation, as is the custom to the peace greetings, which the commander of the faithful vouchsafed to send you. Verily, I see blood flowing all round me. Yes, verily, I see heads falling to the ground, thousands upon thousands of heads. The whole land is red with blood. Nay, the ground, even the earth beneath you, is saturated with the red blood lying over her. She cannot drink more. Upon this, he turned to the secretary and said, "Now read once more." Again the secretary began, "From the commander of the faithful to the people of Kufa, I send greetings. Peace be unto you." He paused, and like a roar of the sea came the answer, "And upon you be peace." "That is better," interjected Hajjaj. "Now continue reading." The message having been duly given, the turn came to the man in the pulpit to say a few words, and he delivered the now famous oration in the form of a series of woes on Iraq. "O people of Iraq, the most stiff-necked and determined of unbelievers and traitors, may your drinking water be denied to you. May your women be divorced from you." Hajjaj followed up this introduction of himself to the people of Kufa by a rule of such severity that the like has never been seen in that country before or since. He was completely successful, and during his long period as governor, not a murmur was heard, not a man failed to pay the utmost farthing in revenue that was due from him. The slightest sign of any trouble was the signal for heads to fall, and these fell in very great numbers. Hajjaj has been called a tyrant. He may have been, but he was the most successful ruler that Iraq has ever known. He knew how to manage the treacherous spirits that Iraq above all countries seems to breed. His name became a byword, and for centuries after women frightened their little ones with the words, "Be careful lest Hajjaj bin Yusuf come and carry you off."